All right. So again, everyone, welcome to session 1 of the Sourcing Lab. We're going to cover search and sourcing basics today. At any point, if you want to chime in, please ask questions, or you can type in the message. Whatever you're most comfortable with is fine with me. So what we're going to talk about is the basics today. So absolute sourcing basics. Let's get down to it. Let's forget about our crazy Chrome extension tools for right now and deep diving Google X-rays. Let's talk about sourcing and its origins. So, sourcing defined. Sourcing is an act of identifying prospect candidates who fit a target profile. It's the proactive search for qualified candidates and not just the perusal of CVs and resumes, of course. Resumes and applications received in response to an online job posting. Sourcing also includes the assessment and candidate engagement piece. So again, we're talking about proactive candidates. We have a lot of different methods of sourcing. It could be job boards. It could be going through our internal, whatever we use for housing candidates. Future state, it could relate to a CRM. Sourcing means going out and finding candidates that are not applying to jobs. So we're talking absolute basics here of sourcing. Where are we finding talent? So there's 10 points that I want to cover on the call today, a 10-step approach to sourcing basics. So think before you search. The preparation for sourcing is what we're going to get into as step 1. Step 2, don't overanalyze resumes. When I first started sourcing, I know I was absolutely at fault there. 3, focus on search string. Focus search strings. Sorry about that. As it relates to Boolean. So we're going to go over the basics of Boolean, the simple aggregators that tie words together or space things out. 4, we're going to go over to see each resume as more than a match to only your job. So that's where a lot of us, especially on this call. So I'm looking at the screen and I see somebody from each of our different functions. When I look at resumes or I look at profiles, I want to think as broad as I can. Is this a talented person that should work for Ingersoll Rand in some capacity? And that's what step 4 is going to cover. Step 5 is running multiple searches in different locations. 6 is search all resumes. And 7, job boards still provide tremendous value. 8, being cautious of submitting the first candidate you speak with. 9, to seek to continually improve sourcing skills. Obviously, we're all on this call. It's a very relatable topic. And then 10 is staying organized. And, staying organized and being time efficient kind of ties back into don't overanalyze resumes. Some of these have a little crossover, but we're going to talk from a higher level and then get into more granular about how those things can affect our day-to-day sourcing here at Ingersoll Rand. Before I jump into it, any questions or thoughts on the 10 steps here? Okay.
They look good.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Was that Randall?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hey, Randall. How you doing?
Great.
Excellent. So, step 1, think before you search. And hopefully it doesn't sound harsh. It literally just means to think before you search. It means taking a little bit of time for the job. It's almost like, maybe turn off the instant messenger for 10 minutes, grab a cup of coffee, grab some water, and think about what you're going to be searching for and the actual search strategy that's going to go along with it. Hopefully you all pictured me with a cup of coffee sitting there thinking about sourcing, and that's kind of the idea, to give it the thought that it really requires. By doing that, I'm going to look at a few different things. I'm going to look at the job description, the job posting, and I am absolutely at fault at this. I've been here 5.5 years. I know what jobs I'm looking at. I've done them before. Why do I need to read the job description? Well, I'm probably missing some things at times, or I'm not giving it the full credit that it needs in terms of, oh yeah, I forgot about that, or the bachelor's degree or the specific skill set. Understanding the job description is a basic sourcing 101 to know what I'm actually looking for. Parallel job titles, that's a huge one. Going a little further in the steps, I can go out to Google, I can do my research, I can learn about different companies. But learning about the different job titles at the different companies is huge. Johnson Controls, they don't call a controls technician that. They call it a system specialist. We have a project specialist, which is kind of in line with that as well. All of our salespeople on the sales and service side are called account managers. What's another good example? A sales engineer with Ingersoll Rand is not really a sales engineer or a service sales engineer. They're not doing sales engineering work. So the different job titles that are out in the industry can really create confusion when it comes to sourcing. Sometimes I like to source simply based on the company and job titles, or flip it and just search by company and then a keyword, or search by titles and a keyword. So being able to understand the different companies and the different titles, it really gives me an advantage in terms of widening my net, slowing down my net, narrowing it. Whatever I want to do with it, I can do as long as I understand the market and the things that I need to be looking for. This is a big one for me. So I get a job and I have no idea what it is. Going out to LinkedIn to review current Ingersoll Rand employees' profiles. Okay, so it also gives me an ability to help educate the hiring manager. All right, this person's in the role, they came from this background, they have this degree. But you want something else. Why is the person you're looking for different than the person we already have doing this type of work? The more ammo I can provide, and yeah, this is sourcing. Yeah, this could be, getting into the hiring strategy call. It all relates to being a trusted talent advisor. No matter which way you shake it, the more information we have, the more deadly we can be as it relates to coaching hiring managers and making sure we're getting the right talent in the door and getting the right talent in the door in a timely manner. I already talked a little bit about Google and how to get out and look for the job titles, the different companies, skills in the job. Again, education is probably what the key fundamental to thinking for your search is. And think about previous employees that we've hired here at Ingersoll Rand. Network with them, gather market intelligence. We don't really have to always just be asking for referrals. We can take that relationship to the next level. I probably get 3 or 4 phone calls a month from hiring managers that just want to shoot the breeze. Hey, what's going on out in the marketplaces? Who's hot, who's not, who's laying off? By working with these internal employees and resources that we have, it makes me deadly when I'm talking to candidates. I still have people bring up the merger from, I think it was 06, 07, Train Ingersoll Rand. We heard some bad things about that back then. I'm like, well, yeah, that was 10 years ago. And, the culture is so different now. And where I get thank you, Michelle. So where I get that information from is by the managers or by employees that we have already. Tell me what's different these days. Tell me, what changed for the better after that. Thinking before I search and prepping is that's huge for me when it comes to sourcing.
Hey, Tim, this is Clay Kelly. I just wanted to add to kind of what you're saying. We used to have a saying at HP when I was there. It was research your plan and plan your search. It's kind of taking that extra time before you start your search to kind of already have a plan of what you're going to do when you go into your search. So it's something they sent us. They actually sent us all out a little like, not plaque, but a little thing you could almost like a sticky note that we could stick on top of our computers or stick beside our computers or whatever to look at every day before we did that. So it was always a saying that I always used, and I thought it was a good one.
Awesome, Clay. Thanks for sharing. Lindsay Monroe, did you write that down? I think we need to send out a little sourcing sticky, and we can send it to everybody to help remind them of sourcing and their approach going into it. So awesome stuff. I like it. Okay. All right. Step 2, getting into not overanalyzing resumes. I know it easier said than done, right? I've never considered myself a very detail-oriented person, so I feel like I've always been able to, browse through resumes fast. But it's been work for me to overcome that and become more detail-oriented and slow down and, make sure I think strategically. But when it comes to looking at volumes of resumes, I need to be really efficient with my time. We're all very, very busy here, right? There's no question about it. I don't necessarily need to be, looking at grammar specifically. I mean, I did look at a technician's LinkedIn profile the other day and they spelled technician wrong. Okay, that's a pretty good example of, maybe we should judge it a little bit. But at the same time, I'm browsing through 400 LinkedIn profiles within a half hour. I want to look at job title. I want to look at company. I want to look at, maybe think outside of the box a little bit. Okay, can I use them for something else? But I don't really want to sit there and read through the whole entire profile. I know when I first started in recruiting, it was big to, is the resume written well? And I'm sure we all have friends that are like, hey, is this wording correct? And do you think this is going to attract results? Well, I tell them it's they're probably going to look at job title and a few buzzwords, and that's it, because that's the quicker way to get through resumes. And I do want to be careful. I'm not overlooking people, but at the same time, I need to move fast. I need to get through these resumes, efficiently and with good success. People aren't professional resume writers. I need to be a little less critical on that. There's core competencies when it comes to writing for almost any job, but at the same time, not everyone has taken resume writing classes or, like us, reviews 1,000 resumes a day. So I can get a little, I don't even think it's a word, but maybe micro-critical. Where you do something so much that you become really focused on it, and you almost have the perfect way to do it. That's not this. I don't need to be that way when it comes to writing resumes. So it's almost a reminder to, be a little more open-minded. And then I already talked about scanning resumes. Don't read them. As quickly as I can browse through them. We know what we're looking for. We're all very experienced recruiters. It's not time effective for me to sit there and analyze every word. And if I'm struggling with a person and I think there's somebody there that would fit for Ingersoll Rand, I will read some more sentences and look for keywords around what they've actually sold or what projects they've driven. But other than that, when it comes to sourcing and gathering and collecting, I'm moving quickly. And then I already talked about job titles, companies to help move through quick as well. So, any thoughts on step 2? And please, again, this is what we'll call it an open classroom setting. If I'm missing something, if you feel like there's points to be added on here, this is developing for our futures as well. This isn't just Tim telling it the way it is and that's the way it's going to be. I want to build these out as fruitful as possible. I want to make sure we have a lot of information for the future taps of Ingersoll Rand. So please feel free to chime in if you feel like there's some value add here. All right. Step 3, focused search strings. Sounds good, Kevin. Thank you. Focused search strings. Getting into Boolean. So these are the basic commands. This is probably the basics of sourcing 101. So you got the ors, the ands. Getting into the ors and the ands. The or, if I use the word or, like if I enter programmer or developer, either of those words is going to come up in a resume. If I use developer and programmer, both of those words are going to come up in a resume. It's really important to use those words that tie things together, and I can't cite specific differences, but I do like to make sure both of them are capitalized or using caps. And the reason for that is, I was on a LinkedIn training a couple of years back, and they said that using that strong language really helps the internal system know that you're trying to separate the two or tie the two together. So it acts as a strong command rather than just typing in the word and. Second is quotations. This is huge. I use this all the time. So if I'm looking for a senior manager, I'll put those in quotations. I do want to be careful here, going back to slide 5 and 4 around what I'm looking for when it comes to job titles. A senior manager of talent acquisition might be something different at a different company. It might be labeled director, or it might be labeled, a vice president if it's a smaller company. So again, That's where I have to be a little more careful. I need to understand my marketplace and what I'm searching for. And I also need to get into, being a little more broad in terms of senior manager. But I'll also tie a lot together. So when I do a lot of my HVAC control searches, I'll do building automation in quotations, and then I'll do or HVAC controls in quotations. And that really helps drive my search. So either of those words are going to be in a profile as it relates to controls at most times. The minus button is really cool. So the minus button is getting all those, say I'm searching out in Google, it gets all the pesky careers out of the way. So if I'm searching LinkedIn, I'll do an example search here. So if I'm out searching on LinkedIn, so we'll do LinkedIn, and how about software engineer, and then we'll do minus jobs. That minus button takes out all the people looking for software engineers on LinkedIn. It takes out all the people that you're going to find just by doing a regular search. That minus button is something that's forgotten about a lot. I forget about it a lot, and I'll do a search, and and then a lot of jobs just come up. See, if you do it without the minus search, you got as many job postings as you can think of. So, a simple minus button really, it takes it from, just needle in a haystack to dead on target results. We'll get into more of it in the future classes, but the minus button is something that I strongly believe in. All right. Let me get over here. Where's my presentation go? Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Having a little technical difficulty. Let's pause the record. The first thing that comes up is by browsing through it. So I scan through quickly. I see 1 year, 2 months. I see 5 year, 8 months. I see 2 years. I see 2 years. I see 4 years. The example here is I'm looking at a salesperson, and the rule in the industry is if a salesperson is kind of jumping around jobs, there might be a reason for that. They might not be the strong sales candidate that we're looking for. So in this, I'm going to look for, what has he actually sold? And the key words here is sold. So he was with SmartWatt for 1 year and 2 months. Knowing what I know about the energy industry, it takes 18 months to sell anything. So I'm going to assume he didn't sell much there. He used the word developed a $30 million sales funnel. He didn't use the word I sold a $5 million project. There's a big difference in those words, and that's where I need to be more conscious of putting in candidates into my pipeline as I'm sourcing who maybe aren't what we're looking for here at Ingersoll Rand. We want people that have sold things. We don't want people that have developed funnels. Previously developed a $70 million sales funnel, secured approximately $40 million in energy performance contracting sales. Okay, maybe that's proper. Maybe he did sell something there, secured. He was there for 5 years, so I'm assuming he sold those. But again, you go back down and it's developed a $30 million sales funnel. So it's probably not the strong salesperson that we're looking for. And when we're pipelining and we're sharing candidates with somebody, we're going to have, gold medalists, silver medalists, bronze medalists. And I want to make sure that I know enough about the profile to, maybe I don't even put this person in my profile, on my sheet where I'm going to start tracking it and reach out to them, as to where, they're not really the person that we're looking for. So Randall, let me know if that answered your question, and I'll keep moving along for now. All right, so after the minus tab, you're going to get into the star tab. The asterisk, I'm sorry. So the asterisk is a placeholder for wildcard terms. So you could do, what's a good example? Okay, so I got one. So performance contracting, that is a term in the energy world. But sometimes you'll find that you're looking for performance contracts or performance, contractual agreement. So what I'll do is I'll do performance contract, and then I'll add the little asterisk next to it. And that pulls up anything with the word, anything after, so it could be contracting, contracts, contractual. It's going to pull up anything after the fact. So anything starting there and then ending in whatever you need it to, or whatever is possible out there in the world. So that's a neat little aggregator that, it really can save time. That way you don't have to write performance contract. You don't have to write out all 3 words. Brackets, or parentheses as I like to call them, so are good for Boolean phrases. So getting into down here, I'll share this on the, make it a little bigger for everybody. So this is why they use brackets. So you get engineer or software developer, and then you could also have Cisco or Microsoft or HP. I would even take it a little bit further here. And then what this is going to do is, so say I'm looking for any of these. Let's even get crazier, do minus jobs. All right, so this is going to pull up in my search engineer or software developer, so anything out there with the word engineer or software developer in it. And it's also going to have the word Cisco or Microsoft or HP in there. So one of those 3 words will be combined with one of these 2 words. So by using the brackets, it helps separate what you're actually looking for. So it makes blocks. So you have one block, and then you have your second block. And sometimes you can combine them, or you could simply do an or. You could do or in the middle here, and then you're going to get anybody with engineer or software developer, or Cisco or Microsoft or HP. So obviously you can really play along with it as to how deep you want to go. I'm going to get more into the deep dive in Boolean sourcing. I think it's a couple of sessions out, or it might be session 2. I'll keep you posted on that. But deep diving Boolean is going to be its whole own topic. So we're kind of just running through the basics here of commands and what are some things you should be familiar with. The site is one of my favorites. So using the site tab is where you can search Facebook, LinkedIn, Career Builder. You can use anything. So say we're looking for, let's do this. Let's do site, Facebook, and energy engineer, just to minus jobs. So what that's going to do is it's going to pull up profiles. So it looks like what it pulled up is companies. We can get into, let's try this. Let's do LinkedIn and see what it pulls up for us. So boom, it pulls up 152,000 results. I don't think they're all going to be resumes or profiles, but there's a good number that are going to be. So by putting the word site in the beginning, the search is only going to focus on that. So site LinkedIn, site Facebook, site Twitter. That's where a sourcer can really get creative with their searches. So that's another neat one that I like to work with. Boolean strings, and Brian knows one of the candidates. All right, Brian. So the search worked. I like it.
Yep.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions about these? And I know sometimes these can be confusing, or if you haven't worked with them a lot, there can be some trickiness to it.
Mario.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This is Mario. Hey, Tim. So when you're doing that Boolean string search that you just did on the site, are you oftentimes putting in the city or the state or things like that as well?
Well, let's try that, Mario. I mean, I do. I was just using that as a basic example, but let's try in Chicago and see what happens. Holy cow! Look at that. It worked. So you can basically tell it what you want it to do, Mario.
Nice.
No problem.
Tim, this is Kevin. I have a question and maybe a comment that might be better for week 2 when you get a little more into the Boolean topic. But I've noticed on LinkedIn doing the Boolean search using the quotations, the brackets, and the or command, just by typing in HVAC in lowercase and then HVAC in uppercase, I've yielded more results on LinkedIn doing both of those in the same search string. So I don't know why that is the case, but I have noticed in some specific cases, it is giving me more results.
That's good to know.
Yep. No, that's great, Kevin. And that's getting into that's on today. That would fit into today's as well. Getting into box 8, running multiple searches in multiple locations. And the reason for that is exactly what Kevin said. That's a great shout out. These systems are tricky. I mean, we're dealing with computers, right? We're dealing with the things that we're trying to talk to via the keyboard, and we want to make sure that we give the computer as many options as it can to really pull up the results. So absolutely play with it. HVAC lowercase, HVAC uppercase. Maybe spell out heating and air conditioning. Get as complex or as simple as you want. The more simple you get, the more results you're going to have to go through. The more complex you get, the more accurate the results are probably going to get with more limited results, which both actually have a place in the world, right? If I'm struggling with a job, I probably want to see more results. And if I'm not struggling with a job and I know it's a very fruitful market, I'll probably, and say I'm working on 15, 20, 30 jobs, I'm probably going to do the search that's more accurate, on point, go through the results and see if I can get a hit that way first before digging through 1,000 resumes. Cool.
Hey, Tim, this is Andre. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is there a list or anything? I know some sites, some Boolean strings work, and some sites they don't, versus, depending on what you put inside of your Boolean string, whether it be an and or statement or quotation marks. Is that still the case where, depending on if you're searching on LinkedIn or Facebook or Career Builder, that, you have to kind of tweak your strings and take some of the the operations out of the Boolean string for them to actually be effective?
Yep. So great question. At first I was like, oh no, he's going to stump me here. But I got the answer. So the list of those sites I don't believe is out there, but that's something I could easily put together. And it's site dependent. So if you think about it, the ones that are true recruiting sites absolutely always allow for Boolean. So any true recruiting site is going to allow for it. When you're getting into social media sites, that's where it's a little bit different. So getting into it a little later on, we have our Chrome extensions that help aggregate that for us for Facebook, as well as Twitter. So those are not very recruiting friendly, but they're still searchable. So really the trick of sourcing is, kind of knowing your marketplace and knowing your system. So what systems allow for what, right? So I think Facebook and Twitter are where it's a little tougher, but anything else related to recruiting, you can always use Boolean.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And Lindsay will make a note of that to make a list. Thank you, Andre, for the extra work.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm kidding. Awesome question, man. Oh, I'm sorry. Anything else related to Boolean before I move on? All right. Step 7. I'm sorry. Step 4. I'm gonna have to get moving here. Step 4. See each resume as more than a match to only your job. Randall asked a question. Why is it called Boolean? I have no idea. That is a great question. Randall, if you so Stump Tim game is on, and Randall wins. So Randall gets the gold star for the day. So next week we're gonna come up with why is Boolean called Boolean, unless someone Googles it on the call. So anyway, step 4, see each resume for more than a match to only your job. Again, as I was getting into the search strings, or why we had cross-functional training across our organization, I was on a call with Polina last week. I learned a lot about a director position as it relates to analytics and programming. So being able to understand the roles within the organization is going to help me while I'm sourcing. I'm able to throw candidates different ways. If I'm searching for Navy nuclear talent, I can know the different organizational roles. I can send those profiles to a different recruiter or a different person. We can go a lot of different ways with it, but being able to understand the roles within the company while we're sourcing is going to really make you a more effective recruiter, and it's going to bring up everybody else's direct source numbers. The more candidates we can pass along to each other, the better. Building pipelines is another part of that. We're moving towards a pipeline capability. Within the next year, a lot of our stuff is going to be building pipelines and having ready to go talent. So why not get a start on that now? So the more we're learning and the more we're reaching out to different talent, not just talent within our group, the more effective we're going to be as recruiters down the road. All right, step 5. This is exactly what we were talking about. So running multiple searches in multiple locations. Again, using different words, using different strings, using different whatever. The more we use those different ideas and the different words, we're going to pull up different things in different places. So diversify your search. Make sure you're not only going to MyHire for search results, but you're going to the LinkedIn, Recruitment Edge, MyHire, Google. The more places you look, the more talent you find. That's just the way it's going to be. You can cast a wider net using different combinations, or you can use a shorter net. And I went through these last two, 4 and 5, pretty quick, just to make sure I stick on time, and because we talked about them a little bit within the previous topics. But anybody else have a comment as it relates to steps 4 and 5? Matching more than your job and running multiple searches? All right, step 6, we're getting into searching all resumes. So again, this is huge when it comes to pipelining. We're building out, again, we want to be a world-class recruiting organization, not just a world-class organization, right? So the more people we have in our databases, the more people we're touching, the better we're building our brand. And by searching all resumes, I don't only mean within different functions, but I mean all resumes. So candidates posted within the last 30 days will also have the highest amount of people reaching out to them, other recruiters. There's a lot of competition out there. So yeah, we have a lot to offer as a company, Ingersoll Rand, but we can also be a lot smarter by going back further than 30 days. So let's go back 30, 60, 90. When I do a career builder search, technicians is a little different. I'll start with the more recent ones, see if I can get a quick hit. But a lot of times right after that, I go back as far as any database will let me go. I want names, I want numbers, I want to reach out to these people. So, really getting as deep as you possibly can is the trick when it comes to searching all resumes. Another good gauge for finding people is, 6 months at an employer is kind of make it or break it. That's where either promises have been met or the promises they were given when they signed their offer letter are just not there. So, reaching out to somebody that posted 6 months ago is not always a terrible idea. I get they probably started a new job, but if someone's not happy at a new job, here we come. That's a great opportunity for us. And searching multiple levels below and above the grade of position we're working for. Can't emphasize this enough. If somebody's 2 years less experienced than we're looking for, I'm going to submit them. If somebody's 2 years more than we're looking for, I'm going to submit them. We don't really know. We have a pretty good handle with our offices. We have a really good handle with, what our HR leader and hiring manager are telling us. But, maybe they don't know what they want until they can see what's out there. If I put it's project team leader for a project manager role, maybe they're going to start to think maybe they need a project team leader. And if they say, hey, I told you I want a project manager, get this guy out of here, this gal, that's fine too. But, I want to present the talent in the marketplace, and I want to network with the talent in the marketplace. Whether I'm going above or beyond, above talent or below talent, in terms of years of experience, I want to talk to whoever's out there. I want to submit people, it doesn't matter what their salary is. Let's educate the hiring teams. That's what our job is as trusted talent advisors. All right. Step 7, job boards still provide tremendous value. I almost say that with a smirk because I know for myself, I've been, hey, I only get the good ones from LinkedIn, or hey, I only get the good ones through networking. But that's not true when I think about it. That's why I run my weekly searches on job boards. I make sure I'm staying in tune with the job board market. Some people just aren't well networked, and technicians are a great one. they need to be a little more careful when they're job searching. So they might just post their resume to see what's out there. I need to be really cautious not to not use the job boards because I don't think it's as valuable as a LinkedIn or a cold call. I want to use the tools that I got to make sure I fill the jobs that need to be filled. And being creative with them. How are you using your job boards? If I'm looking for a C-level or, sales manager, I'm probably not going to find it on CareerBuilder. But if I'm looking for a certain job and I need to understand that there's talent there, I just need to be able to understand how to tap it in. And sometimes it's just that going back 2 years, I can find people that maybe they lived in a different location when they posted that resume 2 years ago, but on LinkedIn it says they live here. Okay, well maybe they want to go back to that location because they relocated for a job and they missed their family or whatever's bringing them back there. I can educate myself a lot by looking at older resumes and just trying to go after talent any way I possibly can. All right, step 8. This one could be kind of a contemptuous topic. So being cautious of submitting the first candidate you speak with. So when I think of sourcing and what I'm doing, rarely is it the first person that I talk to that gets the job. Usually the first person that I talk to is the one that's easiest to find and that's always looking for a job. So I need to be really careful when I submit that person. I'm like, hey, I got a candidate for this job. I might as well just start looking right away because if it's super easy to find a candidate, it's almost the old adage. If it's too good to be true, it is. Not always the case. Sometimes you get the ones and dones, but a lot of time if you have what you think right away, you got the first person, they responded super fast, there might be a reason for that. So just to think a little more outside the box, or for me especially, I get excited. I'm like, oh, I got a good candidate, but I need to make sure that I'm thinking about, okay, what's their motivations and are they truly what we're looking for from a cultural fit and a skill set. And you might move on. So, if you get that first candidate, sometimes I've been prone to, okay, I got what I feel is a strong candidate that got back to me quick. I got a lot of other stuff to work on. I'm going to move to that. Well, I might be missing a great opportunity to speak with others that are out in the marketplace and, just needed a little more time to get back to me, or they simply need time to think about it. We got to remember a job switch is one of those top 5 most stressful times of your life, correct? I mean, it's a really big deal. So putting ourselves in the shoes of the candidates is extremely valuable. In selection. So how can we truly select talent, unless we're talking to more than one person? How can we provide a diverse slate if we're only talking to one person? A lot of this ties back into the metrics that help drive us as an organization. If we're submitting one person and moving on, maybe we're not out there looking for diverse talent, and that's a weakness for us. Being able to get out there and talk to multiple people will only help everybody in the end. All right, kind of a plug here. So number 9 is seek to continually improve your sourcing skills. I don't know about you guys, but the number one way that I've improved my sourcing skills is by going to Sourcing Lab. Not even debatable, but there are a lot. So I joined some Facebook groups. There's a SourceCon Facebook group. There's a Sourcing Talent Facebook group. There's a lot of different groups out there. And I swear I'm not on Facebook all day. That's Lindsay, cover your ears. But there's a lot of groups out there where you can learn a lot about sourcing. Local associations. Networking with recruiters around outside of Ingersoll Rand. I know we all have some great ideas and great minds, but there's new tricks and new tools coming out all the time, so we need to keep our ears to the ground. Making sourcing a priority in the recruiting world. Again, we're busy, I get it, but sourcing is where we get that A talent, and A talent's what's going to drive us into the next bracket of being a world-class company. Brainstorming sessions with your teams. Eric's team is really good at the next one, sourcing blitzes. Everyone gets on the call, everyone sources for an hour. What do we got? It's a team building activity. It's a great way to drive talent to the organization. It provides a lot. And then, of course, the Sourcing Lab. So in between the calls, so every 3 weeks, we're going to have one of these where we're doing a 12 session classroom training. But the other 2 weeks, we're going to have an open sourcing lab. we can all sit and source together and work on your requisition. It doesn't have to be, we're teaching you something. We can do sourcing blitzes on those calls. That sourcing lab's for everybody. It's just it's going to be a laid back, casual place where we can, think of some new ideas and go forward. All right. And then the last topic is staying organized. I'll pause for a minute. Anyone have any questions or thoughts around the last couple of steps? All right. So Polina's going to jump on and talk to us about staying organized. Polina, I'm sorry I talked for so long, but there's a lot of stuff to get through, so I do apologize. But if you could tell us a little bit about how you keep track of your candidates, and that's going to be something we're focused on later from a really in-depth standpoint. But I wanted Polina to share because I know she's someone that really keeps good track of her candidates. So does Mario. Mario's actually really good at this, where he's got a list of candidates he's talked to for the last however many years. So, Polina, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Tim. And hey, by the way, wonderful presentation. You're bringing us back to all those basics that I think even sometimes I forget about as I'm out there doing my work. So just really appreciate you going over it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, so it looks like we are up and running. Is there anybody who cannot see my screen? Great.
There you go.
Is that?
Now I can. You're good.
Okay, awesome. Well, team, I think that Tim touched a lot on, as we're going through, he touched on Boolean searches, and he touched on, how much time to invest in a resume, and really just going out there and looking at talent from a corporate perspective, as far as not just maybe the niche that you're supporting, but going out there, could this person potentially be a fit for another function or, another business unit? So thinking outside. So I think if we all kind of partner together and really build out this pipeline of talent, that we're all going to be super successful. So this spreadsheet here is kind of just a good way to organize your information. And then you can kind of build your Boolean strings off this, and something I'll get into in just a minute. You can also kind of figure out email addresses for companies as well. So I just use this as a template. These are just made up names, but this is kind of how I go through when I'm doing a search and I find the talent, so if I locate them through a search or they respond back to me, regardless, I'm going to capture them in my spreadsheet. So this is just for pipelining purposes. So typically I'll have their name on the spreadsheet, and then the company, and then their job title, and then the state, and then the city. So I know with the state and the city, that's important in terms of the sales and service side, because a lot of times with sales and service, you're looking locally. You're not necessarily looking within, the United States. Where I think with some of our like engineering functions or ops supply chain, you're looking across the U.S. and we're offering relocation. So, I think the city is important to capture when it comes to, the sales and service side. And then in terms of the email, so this, a lot of times I will like play around with emails and I can figure them out typically. So I think I've shared, we've talked about this in the past with some of the folks on the team. Is like GE, it's typically like an IR email. You'll have like john.smith@ge.com, right? Kind of like our emails, unless, like Trip obviously had a unique email, or like Lindsay does. But if it's like, typically it's your first name, period, your last name with GE or Ingersoll Rand. Then if you look down the row, you'll see John Deere is typically first name underscore and last name, and there's variances to this, but a lot of times I'll just play with emails and try like 3 or 4 combinations, and then usually I can hit on it, and if I can, I'll just use I'll go to the Chrome extensions, or I'll go to LinkedIn or something. But this is a good way, so when you find a new candidate and you're trying to figure out their email, this is good to reference to try to figure out those combinations. And then I'll put the next The next one will be personal email. So I'll plug that in. And then the source, you want to know like where you're getting your biggest bang for the buck. So you might want to revisit that. And then, you know, the notes. So a lot of times I'll just capture in terms of like the date that I had contacted them or we spoke. And, you know, if there were some specifics involved with this candidate, they weren't interested, they just started a new job. Well, when did they start that new job? So let's say they started in January 2017, I would capture that there. And so then I would kind of think to myself, okay, I'll try to reach out to them maybe in a year, 2 years later. The other piece that I think is important is, are they a manager? Because you're going to be filtering this spreadsheet when you're going through this. So, you know, you've got your individual contributors and then you have your managers. And then I kind of break it down to the functions. And so I'm working all across the company and various functions. So these are just some, and you can tailor it to what works best for you. So like, I don't know if Marissa's on the line, but I would just use her as an example. So she supports human resources, but then she also supports operations, supply chain, materials, the ops engineering roles. So, you know, her breakouts might look a little bit different. So then, you know, typically I would just put, yes, they're a manager. If they're not a manager, I would just leave that blank. You know, could they potentially be a fit for materials and operations or materials and engineering? And so a lot of times it's hard when you're working across the board. Somebody could be like, have an engineering background, have done operations, and also done materials. So a lot of like the folks going through leadership programs like a GE or other companies, a lot of times they've done a lot of different things. So if you just capture their title and don't capture this additional information, well then when you're going back and you have an opening, you're trying to determine, you know, who in your pipeline fits. You may not remember, does this person have all these things? So I just try to organize it like this so that when I go back and, you know, potentially if I get a new role or I see an opening, I know then to possibly tap this candidate or share this candidate's resume. So this is at a high level. So any questions?
I have a question for you. This is Kevin. I was wondering if you can maybe address the importance of just overall organizational and on a personal recruiting level to the aspect with the pipeline initiative that's going on with IR, and maybe a few things that we can kind of anticipate with that moving forward, and how our own organization will come into play, you know, with our own personal spreadsheets or however we keep track of our own list of candidates that we're keeping in mind for any opportunities within our districts or across the board.
Hey, Kevin, that's a great question, and I'm going to throw that over to Tim because he's been involved in that pipelining work, so he may be able to speak to that a little bit better than I can.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to get into a lot more as we go here. We're just starting to roll out the training for the pipelining project that's coming up, and again, you know, as one of the 11 other classes, you know, we're going to talk a lot about managing our talent pipeline and managing our candidates. So there's going to be a lot of things that tie directly into that in the future.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Cool. And we're getting pretty close to the end of time here, so let me go ahead and wrap up here with the last slide. So final thoughts. Again, we got the sourcing lab every 2 weeks, and then the third week will be the classroom setting. And then again, so thank you for everyone's participation. Don't forget to go to youtube.com Ingersoll Rand Sourcing Lab. So I had to change my Gmail name to Ingersoll Rand Sourcing Lab to make this happen. So now we can search by Ingersoll Rand Sourcing Lab. So all these will be on there and on the SharePoint site. So again, this deck will be there for you if you want to reference it back. All the decks going forward are going to be very, very, you know, finely tuned as to relate to, you know, specific search strings and everything else. So all the information you're going to need is at your fingertips. So, you know, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for the questions. Thank you, everyone. I love the YouTube channel. No, I'm kidding. I'm just messing around. I'm not a personality like that. But honestly, thank you for joining and the participation.
How about your spelling test?
Thank you very much, Tim. Amazing job.
Thanks, Tim. Really